I was talking about interface segregation principle and the idea of having a UI component when it declares its parameters, any function really, but in this example, it's UI component. When it declares its parameters, it needs to declare just what it needs, not just what was passed in. Andrew asked for an example, so let's try to do this. I'm a little buzzed, as illustrated by this is my second attempt at this time with sound. Fine, no bother, no bother. All right, so here's the particular function that I was talking about. In this case, it's a React render method, really. Now, pay no attention to the React in this. We're doing something really bizarre with it. It's fine, it's fine. Point is, it's now in TypeScript. And when I converted it to TypeScript, I was like, okay, this element gets some props. What does it get as props? And so what I did was I didn't go try to figure out what it was passed. I was just like, it's an empty object, right? And then I figured out what needed to be in that object based on the code that was in the display. And gradually, as I've added stuff to the display, I've added stuff to this. So really the interesting code is in here. Display aspects is looking at some projects and some important aspects, whatever that is. And then we map those, blah, blah, blah. The actual page is here. So here is an organization. Here's the projects that it describes, and here's the aspects. And the aspects have fingerprints. Some of them have just one. Some of them have a couple. Some of them have many. All right, so this is what we're actually displaying. And I wanted the props to declare exactly what was displayed, not what was available for display. That was Twitter. Go back to VS Code. There we go. So what I did with the props type was I started with an empty object and then I added the things that were needed. And for instance, in these aspects that we display, I came back to this today and someone else on my team, Rod, had changed this to the type that's passed in. Like he had something additional that he wanted to display and he had changed it to this. And this type actually has all kinds of hooty-hoo on it. It's got the 3 fields that I actually needed. And it's got some functions and it's got workflows. Really, that is not relevant to the UI. And I don't want to have to make this garbage up. Well, okay, these are optional. It wouldn't be a big deal. But I don't want to have to make that stuff up in order to test the UI. And I don't want the people who are reading this code to think it might use that. I want the people reading this code, me, okay, I want to know exactly what is used in the UI, not what gets passed. I don't care what gets passed in. I mean, whatever, I care when I'm passing it in, but that's fine. And TypeScript is beautiful for this because what I did today was I was like, oh, no, we're not passing in the base aspect. I don't want that dependency. And so I changed it to an empty object, and I got some nice red compilation errors. And I was like, oh, okay, so I'm actually using name, documentation URL, and display name. Fine. So that is what I put in here. Now, Rod pointed out, and he's right, that what I could have done here is say pick from base aspect, and then I could list those properties here. Documentation URL, I should have cut and pasted this. Any property that is documentation URL or name or display name should be picked. Typing is hard. Yeah, import that again. I'm not thrilled with this dependency, but I can't justify why I don't even want this to depend on the types that are used in the analysis of the code. This is nice. Whoops. This is nice. Shut up. Okay, there it goes. Because it specifies that I specifically want these 3 properties as used in the base aspect, which is important. Because they're all string properties, right? String, string, string. They actually have completely different uses, right? I mean, obviously, this is a URL. That's a particular kind of string. This is a display name. Okay, that one's actually kind of a normal string. But name is actually a technical term for a field in the database that's a foreign key to some other things. Why are they all strings? Anyway, at least with the pick, I get to say documentation URL as it's used in base aspect. So that's a plus. On the other hand, in fingerprint for display, this display name is not the same thing as in the fingerprint type that we would use. It's something different. It's something like more customized for UI display. Yeah, so I should probably have given it a different name. Yeah, I should. Anyway, conveniently, TypeScript does duck typing. So over here, where I call the thing, where do I call the thing? Here it is. When I pass in these important aspects and blah, blah, lots of code, blah, blah, but what I'm actually passing in for that aspect field is a managed aspect. How do I point to that? Oh, with that. Oh, no, I can't. Nope, it's not going to let me point to that. Okay, it says the type is a managed aspect, which is bigger than a base aspect. So it has those fields, and TypeScript is just like, oh, yeah, that's got all the properties she asked for, so we're good. So I don't have to declare that base aspect implements aspect for display, I think it was, right? Yeah, it doesn't have to say that it does, or that's not it. It's whatever this was. I don't have to declare that it implements this interface. I can just supply the fields. It's fine. It's fine. So I really like that about TypeScript. It lets me declare my types only here and not outside. And it also lets me declare my types relative to other types. I mean, it's given me all the options here. So this is an example of the interface segregation principle in action, of declaring exactly what I need and nothing else for my function. It makes it more testable because I don't have to make up the other garbage just to get the type to compile. And it, most importantly, it makes it way more clear. The type is more informative because it's minimal. Negative is, if I want to use something else, I have to add it. Like, Rod wanted this entropy thing on the fingerprint, and so he was just like, oh, let's just make it extend base aspect. And I was like, no, actually, I don't want everything out of base aspect. Yeah, whatever. I want, oh, I should make that not optional anyway. I want specifically these things. And so I'm like, okay, just put the entropy back in there, yo. It's not that bad. Don't be optional, display name. Right, there it is. So that is a negative. It's a little more work. This is kind of layer-y, but it's totally worth it because it makes the types way more informative. The end. I hope the sound worked this time.